we go. Welcome everybody back to Around the World with Doug Leslie. I am your aforementioned host. Not very impressive, but here I am. As you know, this is a channel devoted to workers around the world who spend their time obeying what the Lord has asked them to do without fanfare and without asking to be put on a pedestal. So we've decided to put them all on a pedestal and allow them to give their stories to the world and see if anybody is stirred or anybody's interested in being part of what they do. As always, after this, when this gets posted online, there will be a whole section below in the comments area in the show notes down below that will have every information you want to know about our guest today and a link for you to participate financially if you feel so led to do so. Of course, I would not bring them here if I didn't think it was worth your financial support. So dig deep and dig in often. All right. Our guest today is Hope. And well, Godfrey's not here, but Godfrey and Hope Rutagengwa with Hagari Ministries. And we're going to let them explain all of that to you. But Hope, man, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for having us. This is, well, me. This is
right. Godfrey's not here, but he's just as involved as anybody else. So
that is very true.
But listen, thank you again. We really do appreciate you being willing to come online and just kind of talk about everything. So as we talked a little bit offline, Hope, really, we want to know who you are. So can you kind of give us the not so much 30,000, but maybe 5,000 foot view of how did you get where you are? I mean, what's been who are you and how did you get here, sort of a thing?
Well, that's a good question. No.
It's okay. Yeah, there's family involved, everyone. This is life, and you all have kids too, so don't judge.
Sorry. Yeah, so my name is Hope. I grew up in Mississippi. I went to Mississippi State University. I was a softball coach and a teacher for a few years after that, and kind of was just stuck a little bit in life and found myself in YWAM, in Youth with a Mission. And I did a discipleship training school in New Zealand, which was amazing. And then
that's a nice location for that, by the way.
Very nice location. I kind of joke about it because at the time I was not much of a beach person. And yeah, I did my discipleship training school with Marine Reach, which is a ship. It's a medical ship ministry. Nice. So not only was yeah, our outreach was in Fiji, so there was a lot of beach involved. I was a bit scared. So anyway, yeah, I stayed with YWAM for a couple years being on staff there. And after that did a children at risk school with YWAM in Switzerland. And as a part of that school, they don't send you for an outreach, really. They sent us to do an internship in Rwanda. And Rwanda was not on my radar at all at the time. But it's kind of one of those places that when you get here, it just captures your heart. So I did the internship for 5 months here. Left a little bit, came back, and here I am still. That was in 2000.
Give us some dating. So give us some timelining. What year was it when you went into YWAM initially? Then how long within the YWAM before you got to Rwanda?
So I went into YWAM initially in 2006.
Okay.
And then I did the children at risk school and came to Rwanda for the first time in 2009.
Okay.
And then I did some other ministry things, some sports ministry, a little bit all over the world. and then came back to Rwanda, moved back to Rwanda in December 2011.
And you came back to Rwanda, why?
Well, when I was here, please talk to your dad about that now. When I was here, the internship that I did was with a ministry called Esther's Aid. And well, let me back up just a little bit. This is actually really crazy and cool. So part of the internship, it was weird. Like none of us had ever been here. There were 7 of us, right? And we came and we stayed at the YWAM base, which was great because at least it was, you know, a safe haven for us. And of course, the local staff here at YWAM helped us find our way and all that. That was super helpful. But the internship part of it, our instructions were, you go and you find an organization that works with women and children at risk to volunteer for.
Mm.
And you wouldn't believe how hard that was. It was like everywhere we went, I had either been involved in some kind of random scandal or, you know, it was just weird. And during that month of visiting different organizations, I had the same dream 3 times. And the dream was just Jesus walking through this kind of slummy area, touching children on the head. And by the 3rd time I woke up with this dream, I was kind of angry. I'm like, okay, this is great, but I don't know what this means. And I don't know what to do with this. Yeah. And about 4 days later, I was in an area, I had gone to visit a ministry, and they took us into this area where they had identified, I don't know, 120, 130 women that were working in survival sex work in this particular area near the airport. And so we went to visit some of the families, the women, whatever, and that was the area for my dream.
Really? So you recognized
Yes.
landmarks or whatever it was that you recognized. Yes. You saw. Interesting. And so okay, so let me back up. Before I get like all saucer-eyed on you. Are you saying that you just kind of knew that you knew that it was the same location, or you literally recognized physical structure?
Yes. Physical structure, even people that were in the dream, because the dream was exactly the same.
And it was very clear. That dream is not
very clear.
Amazing how the Lord speaks with clarity.
Really have dreams very often. Or I mean, I guess they do. So. They say you do, but you don't remember them, right. Maybe. I rarely remember my dreams.
But you remember that one.
Yeah. That's
clear. Wow, that's fast. Listen, man, when he speaks clearly. So
right.
No mistaking. So what was your response when you saw that? I mean, how did you?
I nearly puked. because I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I was just so blown away. Huh?
Had you told anybody else about your dream?
No, at that point I had not.
Okay.
I had not.
Okay.
And so obviously then it was very obvious to me that that was the organization I was supposed to volunteer with and work in that community. And so the kind of segue to where we are now is that what I realized is that at the time, I probably met, I don't know, 10 or 15 women that day that were working in survival sex work, everywhere from 14 years old to 40. And all of them had similar stories. Either they were in school as small children and then didn't finish. Maybe they finished 1st or 2nd grade. A lot, the older ones, you know, they were in school pre-genocide, pre-1994, and then couldn't continue school afterwards. And so essentially they had little to no education, little to no employable skills and no capital to have businesses to do something else, right? But what was really disturbing was that as you look around, all these women have children and none of them were in school either. And I'm like, okay, this is a really disturbing cycle that we're gonna see. And so as a part of my internship, I was trying to work with that organization basically to write for them and help them create kind of a student sponsorship program to support children to go to school. And that was 2009. So in 2010, we supported 2 children that I met in that area to begin school, nursery school at the time. And so yeah, so I left and went on and did my sports ministry things. And Godfrey, who was a YWAMer, he was not working with that organization. He was with YWAM, who I'm now married to. He kind of followed those families.
And so folks who know, he is from Rwanda.
Yes. So Godfrey is Rwandan.
Yeah.
He was born and grew up in Tanzania, but his family came back in 95 or 96 after the genocide. And I met him during my internship, and he was working at YWAM as their, I think at the time, he wasn't like the full accountant. He was like the assistant to the accountant kind of thing, cashier or something like that. So when I left at the end of the internship, he kind of helped, he committed to following those kids and those families and continuing to check on them and support them and that kind of thing. And so honestly, at the time, my intention was not to come back. I had great plans to do other things, you know. Wasn't really sure what those things were.
Don't we all have great plans to do other things?
Exactly. So I was hoping that the organization that I volunteered with would kind of take up this sponsorship program. And in the end, they didn't have the, I guess, the international support to manage something like that. And so I came back in 2010 just to visit and check on the families and that kind of thing. And then I left again and went and did my things that I was supposed to be doing. And at one point,
that's all within YWAM, is that correct? That's all within the YWAM structure?
That was not within YWAM. That was actually with an organization that it's based in the US. But they do sports ministry kind of in unreached areas. Okay. So
it's still missional though. It's not.
Yes.
It's not like you're going back to the States and picking up a coaching position somewhere. You're still raising support. You're still
right. Right.
Did you get a bug? Right.
Sorry.
You get the bug. Once you start raising support and doing, you can never go back.
A little bit of it like an addiction almost. Like you just, I don't know. You got to stay with it.
Yeah, I understand it. So I get that. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, at some actually, I was actually in Iraq in doing basketball clinics. And just kind of praying about, you know, what was next for me and whatever. And literally almost as clear as that dream, I felt like the Lord was like, if you are serious about changing lives for the kingdom, you need to commit to a place and you need to be there. And in my heart, I knew that was Rwanda because I was kind of doing the thing and helping and whatever, but not fully committed.
Yeah.
And yeah, so here I am.
So you come back to Rwanda.
Yep. So I moved back here in December 27th, 2011.
Okay. But you already knew Godfrey, but were you guys pen paling, or
Nah,
how did he sweep you off your feet, Hope?
yeah, that's kind of a funny question. So we liked each other, you know, during the whole the internship thing. But I was kind of like, dude, I'm not moving across the world for a guy. Not really
Okay,
gonna
that's
happen.
fair. That's fair.
You know, but then in 2010, I was kind of like, oh, but I kind of like him. I don't know, maybe it could work, you know. But you know, he was still following those families and whatever. So we would talk, and he actually went to England and did a school with YWAM, Reconciliation and Justice School. And so we had our kind of own things going on, but we were friends and we talked and whatever. And very shortly, like within a few weeks of me, you know, kind of making the decision that I would move back to Rwanda, we were talking, and he was like, you probably wouldn't like me sharing this, but he was like, I've actually had enough of this. Like, I love you, and you need to come here, and we try to make this work. I didn't
Wow.
tell him. I had not told him that I was coming.
Nice.
So yeah, so here we are.
Here
So
you
we got
are.
married in October of 2012, less than a year after I moved here.
Yeah. And listen, when you find them, the person, it moves
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I wasn't 12 or 20.
Right.
Yeah, you know, I
That's
was a
right.
little bit older. And you know, also I just had a lot of people back home question. I said I'm from Mississippi, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people back home questioned what I was doing and why I was doing it and all that. And it didn't really occur to many people that maybe God put us together to make this thing work, this ministry work.
Right.
But now, you know, 12 years later, it's very evident to us and to other people that this is what God has given
This is what
us.
he's doing.
You know.
Were you raised in, I mean, were you raised in the church? Did you come to faith later? I mean, how did that, without going into great depth, but were you raised in the church your whole life and you just kind of known Lord since kindergarten, kind of a thing?
No, my oh gosh, we didn't start my childhood's a bit
That's
complicated.
okay. That's okay. I don't,
Um,
I mean,
and we started going to church when I was in like 7th or 8th grade.
okay.
And so it was a bit of a journey for me. And anyway, came to faith at the end of high school.
In high school. Okay.
Towards the end of high school.
So, but then you were, okay. So at the end of high school, 17, 18 years old. Um, by the time a couple of years into the working world, you're off to YWAM.
Yeah.
So you're adventurous by nature, I take it.
Yes. I used to be.
kids have a way of yeah.
I know. You know, here the primary mode of transportation is a motorcycle taxi,
Yes.
which prior to having kids, I had no problem taking.
Big deal.
And then I had a son, and I was like, maybe this isn't a good idea. So I think I've taken one
Right.
motorcycle taxi in the last like 5 years.
It's the herding of cats kind of takes over everything. So
Yeah, it's true.
all right, so
true.
you got there. Now when you're in Rwanda, you and Godfrey are married. Yeah. So how did this whole idea of Hagari come about? And so tell people about um that process of what you started doing, and then how Hagari kind of was birthed, and what is that? What do you do? How do you do it? That kind of thing.
Right. So, you know, I mentioned during the internship, we kind of set up this sponsorship program for children to go to school. And my hope was that the organization I was volunteering with would take that up, but they weren't able to. And so we kind of took it up on the side unofficially. The first several years that I was here, we were not registered as an organization. We were just kind of doing this as a family.
Right.
We would, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I mean, we would feed 50 kids lunch in our living room every day, you know? So anyway, so Hagari actually is the Kinyarwanda, that's the local language here. It is Kinyarwanda for Hagar. And what I love about the story of Hagar is that, you know, she's a slave. She has a child and is sent away from the family that she's working for, right? So she's sent away. She's wandering in the desert with this child. She thinks he's going to die. She sets him down and looks away. And then God hears the cry of the child, right? And so that is kind of our heart for the families that we work with. They're kind of the least of the society. They're looked down upon here for sure. But we know that God still hears their cry. And so that is where the name Hagari comes from. And that's our heart for these families, that they would know that God sees them and hears them. And so, sorry.
No, you're okay. That's part of that's what God does in people's hearts.
Yeah. So, so anyway, we kind of, we had this for a long time, this kind of dual thing going on where we would support kids for school, and also try to work with the mother, or in some cases both parents if they're around. So like I said, in 2010 we started with 2 children that we were supporting for school, and now we have 150 that we support for school from 120 different families.
Wow.
And so of course, things have evolved over time, but you know, basically, kind of our focus areas are education, health, financial empowerment, and discipleship. And so, what we do is we work in a particular community here in Kigali, in the capital city of Rwanda, and we try to work with kind of local leaders in the community to identify families that are either have been engaged in survival sex work or are vulnerable to it. And so I don't know, you know, a lot of people don't really understand that term. So survival sex work is technically someone that is selling sex for basic commodities, food, rent, school fees, that kind of thing, literally just trying to get by. And interestingly, now the government of Rwanda has kind of identified that there are at least 10,000 survival sex workers in Rwanda. Now, Rwanda is a country of a little bit less than 13 million people. So that's quite a lot of people struggling that bad, you know? So, so anyway, that's the demographic, if you will, that we work with. And anyway, once a family is kind of identified of needing our support, we work to find a partner for their student or for their child, and so that student can go to school. And at the same time, we have developed kind of we call it a family development plan, that we work with the mom, or if the dad is around, also the dad, kind of whoever is most engaged and available. Yeah.
That's fantastic, actually. And so explain to folks who don't know, I mean, look, the reality, folks who'll be watching this is probably all from the West, more than likely. And in the West, as you know, because you grew up in the West as well, school is paid for by governmental systems. Where you are, that is not the case.
Right.
And so kind of make sure people understand that when you talk about school fees, it's not like you're sending them to some private institution.
Right. Well, actually we are. But
what we would consider a private school, though.
right. No. Yeah. So in Rwanda and in most of Africa, and Asia and South, actually most everywhere
most of the world outside of the West. That's right.
School is paid for, period. And in Rwanda, I'll just talk about that because that's where I live. They say that school is free. Okay. So there is a government system that is very cheap. Okay. It's not free, but it is very cheap. However, the families that we work with, I mean, these are people that make between $20 and $50 a month. Okay. And their rent is often 10 to 30. Food is really expensive right now. And so even though it's cheap, school is cheap, it is considered a low priority thing next to food and rent, right? I mean, if you have nowhere to live, yeah, you know, if you have no food,
school fees,
it's difficult to go to school anyway.
Uniform fees and shoes and books
and materials and all these things,
you
right?
start stacking that up, right? So
exactly. But also here, similar to the US. So, you know, in the US, when you live in an area where the school district is weak, it tends to be a poorer community, right?
Right.
And so it kind of perpetuates itself. Right. The school district is weak, the community is poor, those families tend to stay in those areas, and it's just this cycle. And here it's similar. So the government schools, I mean, from a teaching standpoint, it's atrocious. You may have a teacher that has 80 students in the morning in primary school, and then in elementary, and then in the afternoon they have a different 80 students. And so wow. I don't mean to be like, you know, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but there's not a lot of teaching going on. That is
80 students.
Like, yeah, I have taught before.
That's
there's
crowd control, man. That's
exactly, especially with younger children. Right.
Where the tyranny of the urgent takes over everything.
Exactly. And so the way, for many different reasons, the way the system is here is it is very difficult to come out of poverty. I believe that education should be a real tool to bring people out of poverty. But in going to these kind of government schools, it's rare that a student thrives and is successful in a way that they will be able to complete their education and kind of have a different life for their own family.
Yeah.
And so what we have,
sorry, go ahead.
What we've done from the beginning was we would send our kids to private Christian schools. And so now when I say private, you know, it's instead of being $40 a year, it's maybe $300 or $400 a year. Right. So, you know, we're not talking about $1,000 a month school like home. But the quality's a little bit better. The what do you call it? The class sizes tend to be smaller.
Right.
All that. But to be honest, what we have seen over the last, you know, 14 years that we have done this is that for our students who are very vulnerable and have a lot of things going on in their life. It's not working for them. They don't have food, most of them. We, as a part of our partnership fee, we actually provide health insurance for the whole family. So at least they can get some kind of health care when they need it. But education in general is designed for a particular type of student, right? And our students are not normally those kinds of students. They need a lot of extra support,
Sure.
And so we decided a few years, we dreamed about this actually for like 9 years now, of starting our own school. And finally in September of 2022, we launched our own preschool, and which is growing.
But the school you're starting is specifically designed, I assume, to provide that extra level.
Right.
Than
right.
what your Rwandan schools typically won't provide. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. So, there's a lot of things. The curriculum here in Rwanda is not bad, actually. But many of the teachers coming out of school are not actually equipped to teach it well. And so there is still a lot of rote learning, memorization, beating children, this kind of thing going on in regular schools here.
Did you say, I'm sorry, did you say beating children?
Yeah. Godfrey used to tell us that when he was in school. Now, I mean, this was, in the early 2000s. Okay. So not that long ago, right? They would stand in a circle and each kid would have a stick and they would go A, B, C, D. And if you missed or you didn't know, the kids on either side of you had to beat your legs with the stick. Can you imagine? So, yeah,
talk
I mean,
about
that was 20 years ago.
A stress of learning.
Yeah. Now it's not that bad now.
Right.
It's not that bad now. It has gotten better.
Oh my goodness gracious. I don't know how to respond to that.
Some of the stories these guys tell me, I'm just like, is this for real?
Is that made? Are you making that up?
Yeah, no.
So you started your own preschool.
We started a preschool, and then this year we added primary 1, which is first grade. Nice. And so every year we will add
a new level.
At a new level up to primary 6, which is considered the primary school.
So is that so you're putting a building in place?
Yes.
To house all
we
of
are
that.
actually under construction. That is why Godfrey's not here.
He's got work to do.
He's got work to do.
Is the preschool already have a building then, or is it a secondary building for the primary? Or how's that?
No, where we're at now, we're renting. We've been renting a place.
All right. I got you.
So we're under construction and there's multiple phases that we have, plans for long term. But we should be able to move in for what we need now come September for the next school year.
That's huge. That's fantastic.
It's phenomenal. I mean, to be honest, we run on kind of a bare bones budget, really. And so when we started looking at raising funds to build a school, I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't, what are we getting ourselves into kind of thing?
It's the same pool of people, Godfrey. It doesn't.
I know. And it's like, God has just completely blown us away.
So let's talk about that. I mean, there's obviously things that are the really hard stuff you learn along the way that God teaches you lessons.
Sure.
Like here's a dream. I want you to start working in this area because this is what your life is going to be down the road. And by the way, I wanted to say that how kind the Lord is to your life and teaching, because you all through this, before you got back to Rwanda, you weren't teaching was not part of what you were doing missionally at all. I mean, you were, but it was the coaching element, not the teaching element. And then he put you in a position to thrust full hard into the
Education.
academics, right? The teaching
Yeah,
mode of life.
I
Um,
know.
but what are some of the, so tell us, like, what's the reason, what's God doing in your guys' midst at this point? I mean, there are big things that are happening there, obviously, and it's not a small undertaking for anybody who's been out there raising funds. If you've been raising funds for anything ministry wise,
Mm,
raising construction funds for overseas projects is not an easy lift, so to speak. So
no.
tell us about, where, how's God done this? So how, when you're looking back and you're like, what in the world?
Yeah, I do that almost every day. Uh,
Well, that's good.
I
He
I
keeps you
really
on your
do
toes a little bit.
because yeah, it's you know, so we just kind of started it like doing Giving Tuesday a few years ago, right? And we thought it was so huge
So
when
I pause you right there. So folks who don't know, Giving Tuesday is one day in the fall every year in the US where people have a big push for fundraising on a particular day of giving. And it's a big deal among the nonprofit sector. It's called Giving Tuesday. And so that's what Hope's referring to.
right. And so we always cheat, like we leave ours. It's supposed to be, like you said, one day, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Um, but we always leave ours open for, multiple
Atta
weeks.
girl.
This time, like a year, you know, because it's like you want to make that push for that campaign. But we thought it was a really, really big deal when we raised $12,000 to support some different activities we were doing. And so when we started talking about construction for the school, I was like, okay, but we need like 150 to even start.
Just to
And
break ground, right? So,
yeah, we had already raised, I think maybe 75 or 80, something like that. And I'm like, okay, but to actually complete this phase, we need a minimum of 150. And I'm a bit of a dreamer. I mean, I think you kind of have to be to do this kind of stuff.
yeah.
Um, my husband is more of a realist. I was gonna say pessimist, but
That was nice of you. Realist is the nice term.
realist. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. And then, even other people around us were like, no. There's no way it can't work. And so in myself, I'm like, oh, maybe it's not gonna work. I don't know. God, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But what choice did we have, right? We've got a school. If I back up a little bit, lest you think I'm a moron for just starting a school out of nowhere, not having any funds. We actually were in line to receive a grant to build the school and to fund the school for 10 years. And at literally the 12th hour, it fell through. And so then we were like scrambling, saying, okay, now we've started this school thinking this was going to happen. Now what do we do? And so that's why we started fundraising for the school, the construction of the school. And so anyway, I don't know. We just kind of, God was like, you got to try, you got to try. And so we did. And I don't know. You can tell because I cannot articulate it. It has to have been a miracle.
Yeah, but how I know people get really frustrated sometimes when when that big check doesn't come through the mail. or into the
Yeah.
bank account or whatever. But how can you not appreciate how the Lord, when he wants to keep it for himself and for his purposes, that little bit of struggle and that little bit of, you obey and be faithful to the obedience that I've called you to, and I'll take care of the other stuff.
It's so true. And so I grew up as an athlete, right? In
Me too.
sports and all. Yeah. So you, especially if you're a team sport person, like you really understand and have that spirit of collaboration. Like nothing works if your second baseman is laying on her face, then your shortstop is going to have a problem, right? And so it's like that thing of collaboration. I think God's kingdom works the same, you know. Obviously none of this would work without him. There would be no reason. None of this would work. But in addition to that, he mobilizes his people to support efforts like this to make them work. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who is also a pastor when the grant fell through, because I was like sick. I was like, should I move home? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck, right? And he said, you know what, Hope? He's like, the thing is that it would be really nice to have that kind of one-off, here you go for it kind of thing. But he's like, really, God doesn't work that way very often. He loves to bring his people together, to rally around something and to make it work. And that is so what has happened here. The donors that we have, I think you mentioned it, like it's the same pool of people. We very rarely have new donors coming in, really.
Right.
And so I don't know. God just
he just does it, right?
did it.
Yeah.
Just did it. He mobilized his people and he blessed this effort, and here we are.
What are some of the hard lessons along the way?
Oh man, there's so many.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is well, I mean, there's the cultural things, right? Those are hard lessons, right? Just the cultural struggles day in and day out, and there's a consistent you need to walk in humility, because I don't know everything. You know, I say to Godfrey all the time, I said it yesterday in a meeting, like, well, this is what I think, and this is what is logical to me, but I don't always think like a Rwandan. So maybe I'm wrong, you know? And I think, yeah, just having that spirit of humility and being able to ask for help and help in understanding, because otherwise you would just plow ahead with your own agenda and it may be completely off track, contextually. So that's a hard one, and the thing is it doesn't get any better because it's like the longer you live here or anywhere, I think the assumption is you would have more things figured out, and in some ways you do, but in some ways the longer I have been here, the more I'm surprised by things, and the more things I realize I don't know and I don't understand, and that I need help from people around me, and I need God to soften my heart to be willing to open up to other people's ideas and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's been That's been a big one for me over the last, I guess, 14 years almost.
Just the consistency of realizing humility is, this is like the practical walking out.
Yes, every day.
Right? Because I know where you're coming from. Humility and athletics in the US, they're not synonymous terms.
No,
Right? It's
not
the
at all.
aggressive.
Yeah.
It's what you grow up
Let's
in.
hold it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
you go,
Yeah.
right? And people who succeed
Yeah.
in athletics in the United States are just A personalities that drive.
Yeah.
And
that was me for a long time.
yeah.
And so to literally need other people around me to say, oh, maybe you should slow down. Maybe you should think about it from this angle. That's something.
So this is kind of I don't, it can seem like an ambiguous question because it just popped in my head. So I'm trying to formulate the question as I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
But how have you?
I'm sorry.
Okay, you're good.
Bennett, can you grab your sister for me, please? Thank you. Sorry,
How
Gracie
have
woke
you
up.
seen that benefit relationally? I mean, in other words, your purposefulness of being of walking out humility in your context as an American in Rwanda. Now, it's obviously going to be different for Godfrey because he's Rwandan, but for you, because of your history and your background, where have you seen that land relationally there because of that that specific choice to do to life?
Right. Well, that's kind of a tough question.
If you don't have, I mean, I know it's a tough question. It's kind of one of those, just hit my, it just brought curiosity to me. Like,
well, yeah, no, the question, the answer is actually kind of easy to me. I'm just trying to figure out how to say it without sounding super arrogant. There's a guy.
Not arrogance, it's just reality. That's what I look at.
Yeah. So there's a guy that he's actually the very first person that I met off the plane in Rwanda. He was working with YWAM, and he's the one that greeted us at the airport and brought us home. So I've known him this whole time. And he was on staff with Hagari for several years, and he's still a part of the kind of board and things like that. And he says to me often, Hope, you're not like other Americans that I know. Sorry, guys, this is Gracie.
Hi, Gracie.
Can you say hi? Can you say? She just woke up.
I can tell, yeah, that's life. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. She's like, okay.
She's like, what's going on? Who's this?
She's gonna look back on this and be like, what were you doing? Why would you think this would be okay?
Yeah. So I think it's unfortunately, we have created a name for ourselves as Americans that it's like, we know the way, we do what we do, get out of the way, get on the train or move.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's right, wrong, or indifferent. That is how we are known and perceived in many parts of the world.
That's true.
And so to go against that is remarkable.
Oh,
sorry.
That's okay.
Wow.
It's okay. So when you said, so when he said, Hope, you're not like other Americans, that's what he was talking about.
Wait, sorry.
You're
One
okay.
second.
You're okay.
1 second. Say that one more time.
So his point was, am I hearing it correctly? You're not like other Americans, but that was in a good way because you weren't pressing your way of doing things so hard. that it got in the way of what God wanted to do in their midst.
Right. Now, sometimes I do,
Well, okay.
sometimes
Yeah.
Sometimes I do. Like, for example, this is countercultural. In Rwanda, it's not a reading culture, and that is actually one of the reasons that we have decided we had to have our own school, because there was not a focus on reading at all. And I have found it's very important to me, and I think it's very important to students and to, creating lifelong learners. It's difficult to learn if you don't know how to read. And so that agenda I have pushed, call me American or whatever, I'm going to push that one. And so I think it's just, there's many things in every culture, right? That it's like cultures swing, and then the Bible is like the plumb line, if you will. And maybe as Americans, we're over here, and maybe as Rwandans, we're over here. But trying to come back to center and trying to be more in line with God's culture, the culture of the kingdom, that's the road we have decided to plow as Christians. And it's not always easy.
Right.
And so, anyway, that's what we're trying to do. We don't always do it right.
Yeah, but it's God's gracious, right? It's not about a perfection. It's about a direction.
Yeah.
Right. And we stay on the path that we've been called to, faith, and take the next step.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the lumps come with it.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people say this. A lot of people in missions or even entrepreneurs, that you'll hear them say things like, man, if I had known, now she's saying hi. If I had known what God had set out for me, I don't think I would have taken that road, but God is really good at showing you enough to convince you to at least take those steps. And then you take a step and he's like, oh yeah, but there's also this. And you're like, huh, yeah, but there's also this, and that's okay, because God knows us better.
That's right.
Than we know ourselves. So
That's
he
right.
knows. Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
So where are you guys now with Hagari, and you and Godfrey, as you keep going headlong into this thing? In terms of what do you see next around the bend? Where do you find that right now this is what we're involved in, that we're really excited about? I mean, obviously the school stuff, but where if you were, I want to say I don't want to say the word pitch, but if you were presenting in terms of, this is kind of the big move that we're in process with,
Right.
what the Lord's doing right now in our midst, that people can join you in financially or prayer, others, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the school is kind of, I would say, even though we're a little bit along the way, it's still the big one. If just, if you're talking about driving across the country and starting in Florida and ending in San Diego, we've made it to about Savannah, Georgia. Like,
are you starting in Florida? Where are you starting?
We're starting. Hey. Okay. Let me back up. We've made it to like Mobile, Alabama. Sorry. Starting in Savannah, we've made it to Mobile.
Okay.
So we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
In terms of fundraising, in terms of building the capacity of the staff, in terms of what we want to see accomplished at the school. But next to that, can you give me 1 minute?
Oh yeah. Little lady. Folks, this happens. And it's part of life. Y'all have kids too, so we're not upset about this at all. This is part of our requirement as being parents. So I do want to remind everyone, as Hope is doing what she's doing, that we will have um, all the information about Hagari and their needs and who they are, and a link to give if you're interested in giving in the comments below. So please read through those. There we go.
Sorry.
Hey,
I'm
don't
so
worry. And your microphone did a great job because you knew she was upset, but we couldn't hear any of that really.
Oh, nice.
So
That's good. So I would say the thing next to that is that let me back up a little bit. I have seen a lot here, and Godfrey has seen far more than me. Westerners come and start an organization, and then when they leave, it collapses because the financial support is not there.
right.
And so our the at least for the two of us, we're kind of in this phase of trying to figure out how do we make Hagari sustainable beyond us. You know, how is Hagari going to run in 100 years when I'm not alive anymore, you know? And so we're trying to look into, you know, what are ways that we can, because in America, this is not allowed for nonprofits, but in Rwanda, it is encouraged that nonprofit organizations create funding streams.
Mhm.
Because they know it is without a funding source from the West, it can be very difficult to make it work here. And so we're looking into that. How can we create long-term funding streams that will support Hagari if there's a financial crisis,
Mhm.
if every donor we have drops off, if we're no longer involved for whatever reason. And so that's kind of aside from the school, like the school is here in my brain, and that the other side of my brain is constantly thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, ideally, because, you know, like I said, we work with extremely vulnerable people, extremely poor people, and we do that in the city of Kigali, which is a shockingly expensive place to live. It is
Yeah.
mind blowing, actually. And so a bonus to this, creating a way for Hagari to be sustainable, would be if we could also employ our families.
Uh,
Um,
so industry of some sort to create a revenue stream.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Nice.
need a genius. We need a genius. We need an entrepreneur and a genius,
There you
and
go.
probably a significant amount of capital. So, you know, it's not really a big ask.
It's just one of these small little things. This is not.
Just these things, a genius,
Yeah, but
an
people are all
entrepreneur.
over the world who are quasi-retired. They've
That's true.
worked their life, they've gone through their incoming generating years, they have huge amounts of capital and available, and God simply has to say, that is not for your vacationing or
This
your
is the thing.
legacy, but it's for my purposes. And everything changes,
That's true.
right? They are the entrepreneurs who have done exactly what you're talking about and know how to do it, theoretically and practically, but the others have to learn how to do it with, or how to do it within Rwanda. That's all.
Right.
And but they're there. And so the question is, okay, folks, you're watching. So if you're one of those folks, be sensitive to the Holy Spirit, and when He leads, obey.
True.
Because there's lots of great stuff like Hagari out there who's in need. So,
That is
All right,
true.
one final question for you, Hope. And I want you to kind of do a double approach on this, a dual approach, if you could.
Okay.
The question is answering the why.
Hmm.
Why in the world would a lady who has an education and a career in the United States, and I know you said you were stuck, but being stuck isn't 15, 20 years of life. It's a moment in time, right? So why? What's the why that you guys are leaning into, and how do you encourage people who are in your situation to lean in and do the same thing?
Yeah. So for me, actually, it's quite simple. And for Godfrey too. It's the thing of the least of these. So this beautiful world that God has created and that we live in is unfortunately extremely self-centered, right?
Yeah.
And there are so many people that are in so much pain and are being left behind. And in most cases, it's the vulnerable, it's the orphans, it's the poor, it's the destitute, it's these people that are outcast. And I don't remember the number, but there is an obscene amount of verses that address taking care of the poor, taking care of the orphan, this kind of thing. And so that is the why for me, because it, somebody has to, somebody has to. And so why not? Why not? I think it's I don't know, in the Bible, when it says, what you have done for these, you have done for me. When Jesus says that, I think about that. I'm not very smart. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a tremendous amount of gifts, but I can give that. I can give my heart and I can give my time to serve. And so that's the why for me.
And may I say, you can offer your unrelenting obedience
Right.
to
Right.
what God asks of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard one,
Yeah.
I think especially in our culture in the West, and especially now, we don't like doing what we're told
Right.
or what we're asked to do. And yeah, so I think it's a very beautiful thing to be able to lay down whatever you think was important for your life. It's not near as important as what God has for your life. And so a lot of people say random things like, oh, well, you've given up this and that. And if you only knew how much I had gained,
Yes.
And sometimes it feels selfish, because I'm winning here. you know I remember when I was
That's great.
making when I was on my DTS, my discipleship training school in New Zealand, way back, nearly 20 years ago, good grief. um I had been coaching softball, and we weren't a very good team. And I was still very much in my athletic brain. And I was just praying, like, God, what am I going to do next? And I had this impression from the Lord that he was saying to me, Hope, if you will just coach for my team, you will not lose again. So here we are. Now, yes, I
Beautiful.
experienced all
That is
all the
a beautiful statement.
yeah. It's so yeah, I experience loss and frustration all the time, but the end game, we're not losing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So I think, for
Great.
anyone that is on the fence about missions, whether it's going or giving or supporting with your expertise or whatever it is, you can't lose. You really can't. Every time we have people come over here to serve or to volunteer, God is just so I think present when you're willing to give up of yourself. He's so present in those times. And so, I mean, he always is, but there's just something different about when you are willing to give of yourself. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
That is beautiful. What I love about, and I think this is what makes Around the World a little bit unique, is that it's not a theoretical principle that you're presenting. It's something that you've lived. It's a lived
Right.
experience when we can say, no, I watched God do this. This is what I'm saying. You can't lose by obeying.
You can't.
I'm
It may hurt. Don't get me wrong.
right.
It may hurt, and there are sacrifices. But
Yeah.
again, it goes back to your perspective. What is loss?
Right.
Yeah,
So that's great. That's just it's a great perspective of here's what I love about how God does this. He uses terminology you're going to immediately identify with.
right.
If you play for my team, you'll never lose again. That just fires. He's such a genius like that.
He is a genius.
So,
It's
all right,
wild.
Hope, man, thank you so much for your time. We've exhausted our time with you, but thank you for that. Taking the time out of your schedule to be with us. We appreciate that very much.
No, thank you. This is
tell,
great.
tell Godfrey we missed him.
I will.
Uh,
I'm sorry. He often has really good things to say.
I know. That's why I'm like, man. So
I know.
Godfrey's a good guy, and maybe we'll do this again at some point, and people can meet him as well. But folks, if
that'd
you're
be great.
watching and it moves in here, and especially if you're an entrepreneur who can help, you can reach out to us, or you can reach out to Hagari directly. Hope, what is your website?
Hagari.rw.
Hagari.rw for the country of Rwanda. So folks, you can go there directly and read more. Please check the comments below in the notes section below this video, and we'll have all the areas about Hagari and give you links directly. And specifically, if you want to pitch in financially, there'll be a link to their donation page there as well. Hope, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Doug.
Love being with you guys. Thanks for all that you do for the kingdom and for 20 years of obedience. And you're still pressing it out. And as far as I can tell, you have no plans of stopping. So that's a good thing.
We got a lot of work to do.
You got a lot. You're only in Mobile after all. You got a lot of traveling.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Folks, we'll see you next month. Around the World. You never know where in the world we'll be.
Nice. Thank you, Doug.